We've got a pretty horrifying story out of Waukesha the other day, and I didn't comment that much about it on Twitter, and I think it would be wise for most people not to. There's something that some people refer to as the 24-hour rule. That means when there's a tragic event, you got to wait to figure out what happened. Of course, we're learning some details, and I think they're important, but we don't know exactly what the motivations were. But for those that aren't familiar with this story, there was a parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. It was a Christmas parade. People were just marching, playing music. People are waving flags. There's a horrifying video of what appears to be a small child just, doing a little toddler dance. SUV goes flying straight past the kid. Doesn't hit the kid, but it's scary to see just how close that was. Many people have lost their lives. 40 people, I believe, were injured. There are several fatalities. And this is a nightmare situation. It came so close to the Rittenhouse trial verdict that we're seeing many on the left try and conflate the two or in some way try to associate them. And the reality is there are some people on the right as well. However, the suspect in this case has posts on his social media in support of Black Lives Matter, anti-white rhetoric, racist rhetoric, and according to Andy No, posts about how to get away with hitting people. Now, the official statement we're hearing in the press is that this man was fleeing a crime, but the police are not ruling out terror. We have the story from timcast.com, very, very blunt and simple, and then we'll get into the greater details of this. But I want to stress, just let's be careful not to speculate. I know a lot of people are saying, I've seen on Twitter, they're saying, if this guy in Waukesha has Black Lives Matter support or anything on his page, then that's the motivation. Why? Well, it's because it's what they do with Kyle Rittenhouse. It's what they did to Kyle Rittenhouse. But let me just remind all of you, what separates us from the cult is that we don't do that. And it's unfortunate that it puts us at a disadvantage, honesty and integrity. Now, there are some people, and there are many people on the right who are going to say this was Black Lives Matter terror and all that stuff, and I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to tell you as it is. The suspect in this case has been, there's a person of interest. They've been detained. I don't even know if they're the suspect, person of interest. And this is important too. This individual has, my understanding is a long rap sheet, support for Black Lives Matter. Does that mean that this was motivated by politics? No. Is it possible? It is. Coming just a couple days after Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty and people all over the internet were pledging revenge and calling for violence, we get seemingly the Black Lives Matter supporter, potentially as a man who drove an SUV through a parade in a Christmas parade. Now, here's the important part. We don't know that the man being named actually was driving that car. And when people jump the gun and push this to politics, you fall into a dangerous trap. And that's why I say we don't do what the cult members do. When Kyle Rittenhouse came out in Kenosha and everything went down, we end up with this wave of establishment cult left all saying the same thing, that, he's a white supremacist who crossed state lines with a gun, that he shot black men who were protesting for justice, and none of it was true. Kenosha was basically where he lived. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous you just say that he didn't live in Kenosha when his grandma, his aunts, his uncles, his cousins, his dad lives there. And apparently he had lived there up until recently when his mom moved. And they put up all these lies. They said all these lies. It was lie, 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 lie. It worked. A lot of ignorant individuals fell for the lies and to this day still believe the lies. And for that, they have become violent and angry. And it is scary. But since the beginning, we have told the truth, or to the best of our abilities. It's kind of remarkable. I would say this to many on the left who are still watching Hassan Piker or these other progressives who are giving you the false narrative or trying to justify it. Well, now that you've seen the truth, you watched the trial, you realize what actually happened. Please go back and watch Timcast IRL, watch my segments, and you will see we were telling you the truth the whole time. We had no intention to deceive, to manipulate, and I have no intention to claim that this guy was involved with Black Lives Matter to any great degree, because we don't know who this guy was. We have a person of interest. They found the car. They know whose car it is, so I believe they detained the guy for questioning. It may be him, but we take precautions to make sure we don't give you false information. There are many people on the right who don't do that. And I would say the overwhelming majority, if not the entirety of the mainstream press, also doesn't take great care to make sure they're telling you the truth. And this is what ends up happening. you end up with people pushing narratives for political power. I'm not interested in political power. I don't want anything from you. If you want to support my work, you can go to timcast.com, become a member, and you don't have to. I have no intention of tricking or manipulating anybody to play to a narrative. I will simply tell you what happened, and I will try to be reasonable. And the reasonable view is cops right now are refusing to rule out terror. For me, that's enough to point out that the person in question has ties to Black Lives Matter, and there is a potentiality. This was a revenge attack because people were calling for it. People on social media were saying, this is white supremacy, it's patriarchy, all that stuff. Let me give you some of the context in this story so you can understand. It's from the Daily Mail. Driver of rampaging SUV that tore through Waukesha Christmas parade, leaving at least 5 dead and 40 injured, was fleeing a knife crime. Cops detained suspect and refused to rule out terror. So 5 people have been confirmed dead, 40 confirmed injured. The parade was underway in Waukesha, Wisconsin, when a car broke through the barriers at 4:40 p.m. and hit crowds. At least 12 children are among the injured. With elderly people and a priest also confirmed as being hurt, police say a person of interest is in custody, but no arrests have been made and no motive has been disclosed. NBC reports the person has a long criminal history and was fleeing a knife fight at the time. Officers say they have not discounted terror as a motive, but are also believed to be looking into the possibility the suspect was fleeing an earlier knife incident when he reached the parade route. I'll give you my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that the knife crime narrative doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know about terror because there's no real evidence to suggest either are correct. What I can say is, in the videos of this incident, the man driving the SUV makes a conscious choice to turn, breaking into the barriers and plowing through people. At any point, he could have turned off this parade route and didn't do it. It seems to me that it was intentional to cause damage to this parade. I don't know why. I don't know who the person is. All I know is that there is some potential evidence of a person of interest is related or supports Black Lives Matter. But if I had to make a guess, I would not claim it was knife crime. It just makes no sense. You're fleeing a crime, so you turn into a parade and start running people down? I mean, that's the opposite of inconspicuous. It is overtly attention gathering. I mean, you want to flee a crime, you wouldn't make yourself known to an extreme degree and cause mass chaos and destruction. But we do have to be careful. Because I don't know. And I'm not going to play a game and say I know who this guy is. I'll tell you what worries me. Check out this tweet from Andy No. He says, despite few details being known about the deadly car ramming incident in Waukesha, leftist accounts on Twitter are politicizing the incident because of their bitterness with the Rittenhouse verdict. In one tweet, Chris Wiggins says, it's okay. The driver in Waukesha was afraid for his life and defending himself from the unarmed holiday crowd. That's Wisconsin law now. This is despicable. It's horrifying. I won't be party to it, right? When Kyle Rittenhouse, when all that stuff went down, on Timcast.io, we had 7 different witnesses come on the show, including Richie McGinnis, who was named in the criminal complaint. And they told us their story. And I said, it sounds like self-defense, and it sounds like a very extreme tragedy that shouldn't have happened. There's a lot of reasons why it shouldn't have happened, but let's just say it shouldn't have happened. A guy intentionally broke down barriers into a parade route, ramming people straight through. And you have the nerve? I'm sorry, this is evil. This is absolutely evil. You need to stop assuming these people are just ignorant. And this is the mistake many people make. There's a video going viral. I tweeted it out where they're chanting, say his name, Joseph Rosenbaum. Mark Ruffalo says Jojo lost his life. A pet name for a man who committed atrocities against children. And when I say atrocity, I mean the worst imaginable thing you could do to a person, to a prepubescent boy. This man did. 5 different kids, 11 counts. And it's reported that there were actually more accusations, but they didn't make it to court. And they cheer for this guy. And everyone's like, oh, they're so dumb. They don't. And I see these tweets where they're like, don't you know that he did these things to kids? Yes, they know. Stop assuming they don't. Stop pretending like it's just sad old ignorance. Mark Ruffalo, Pedro Pascal, these Hollywood celebrities. Hollywood covered up Weinstein. The media covered up Epstein. And you're like, the only reason they're cheering for Rosenbaum is because they just don't know. How about at a certain point you realize they do know? Or at the very least, negligence can become criminal. I'm not saying every single person cheering for these guys knows exactly what's going on. I think a lot of people didn't know what Weinstein and Epstein were doing. But I'm talking about the elites, the celebrities. I'm supposed to assume that Mark Ruffalo and Pedro Pascal didn't know about the history of this guy when they defended him, when we know all too well that Seth MacFarlane, for instance, made many jokes about Kevin Spacey and Weinstein. He knew. Everyone in Hollywood knew. You think these celebrities don't know? Well, we don't know about this guy in Waukesha because it's just a person of interest. But let me show you some more of these tweets, man. One guy said, we need to know the ethnicity of the driver in Waukesha, Wisconsin, so we know whether it was self-defense or terrorism. Amazing. One guy said, the MAGA violent actions are ruining Wisconsin. People get involved now. Murderers in Waukesha, next to Milwaukee and Kenosha, get some gun control in that state to stop the legislature from their criminal activity. Take your state back. The red SUV was acting in self-defense. This guy, this John Rapp guy, I think he had to delete his account because he got annihilated. I mean, people were just screaming at him. SUVs trending in the United States, probably from people saying, like, we got to ban SUVs. There's more. He says, left-wing accounts on Twitter immediately politicized the deadly parade incident. The driver in the incident will claim self-defense. It's the new normal, says Angela Belcamino. In Oklahoma, it's now legal to run over protesters. You don't even have to claim self-defense, none of which are true. In many states, I believe in Florida as well, if you are surrounded by a violent mob that is attacking you, you have an affirmative defense to drive through them now because you're defending yourself. It's true. But that's not like you can just slam on the gas, tear through barriers, and run a parade over. Look, there are those of us in the United States who remember, waking up on Christmas morning, whether it was a nice middle class or upper middle class Christmas morning or Christmas Eve, whenever you'd celebrate it, and opening presents and being there with your family. For me, it was much more like, upper lower class. Is that a thing? I think so. We'd wake up to our presents, and we didn't get all the best presents in the world, but we had, oftentimes lower middle class. So, we got the Nintendo, and we'd go out to this family restaurant where they had trains running on the ceiling across, and we'd get, my family loved it, and you get the French toast sticks for Christmas. Man, those are the days. These people were celebrating that. These good, regular old working class people in their Milwaukee suburb. Why would anyone, for any reason, celebrate or mock what just happened? These are dark times, I would say. These are dark times, in my opinion. When Kenosha goes down, the other day when I was talking about Kenosha, when I've been talking about it all week, I said Rosenbaum was a monster, and that's an understatement. I mean, he was more than a monster, and I didn't want him to get hurt or die. I wanted him to stay locked up, away from people, because when he comes out, he becomes a harm to himself and others, and we don't want harm to people, even if they're disgusting people like that. I mean, a lot of people are like, stop defending him. Defending him? No, I just believe that the state should not have the authority to take people's lives because the state tried to take away Kyle Rittenhouse's life with life in prison. And think about how many other people who were wrongly charged in such a way. Think about that guy I think it was in Oklahoma or Nebraska, who was defending his dad who got attacked. He was being choked out. We talk about Kyle Rittenhouse and he won, but there was another guy. I forget his name, and I apologize, but he was being choked. He was actually being choked. He fired warning shots. He said, don't, stop, please stop. And then he fired in defense. And they tried to put him in prison. He took his own life. There are monsters in large amounts in this country. And you can see it in their tweets. The callousness, the anger, the desire for pain and suffering. That's not me. And there's certainly people on the right who feel that they want retribution. You see a lot of people saying Republicans take over. It's got to be revenge. To a certain degree, I agree. Not that I think we want to cause any pain or suffering. I don't agree with those saying, just say it's Black Lives Matter, just say it and blame him. No, none of that. Because I'm more interested in just giving you the information you need so that you can understand what's going on. But when it comes to politics, We absolutely have to push back in the area of freedom. They want vaccine mandates. Well, I want gun mandates. I want a gun law saying that everyone is legally required to own a gun. And when they say, you can't do that, I'll be like, well, you can't mandate a medical procedure on me. If Joe Biden wants to come out and say everyone's got to get a medical procedure, then I want to come out and say everyone must legally own a gun. You must. By executive order, I am hereby decreeing an OSHA rule for people's safety because of the rise of crime in this country. We are now putting out a rule that everyone must be armed at all times. Now, that's absurd, isn't it? Yeah, you don't need to be. But hey, crime's skyrocketing across the country. How many people are losing their lives to violent crime? It's going way up. If it saves one life and we can get back to normal and end this epidemic of crime, it can be done by everyone being strapped. So how about that? How about that? We get someone to run for office, and the first thing they do is they say, new OSHA rule. Everyone, in order to have a job, has to have a gun. Now, that's ridiculous, isn't it? I actually think people should have weapons. I believe in open carry and constitutional carry. But this is the issue. So long as we aren't actively pursuing mandates in the way that, we want it, or I shouldn't say mandates because, it's really about freedom, right? So we should just say the abolition of gun laws. Someone should decree that the president should decree disband the ATF and all. But you see, libertarian, moderate, right, they never fight for this stuff. Now, they may say to the Democrats, stop, wait, don't. But they don't actively pursue removing these laws. I want to show you this tweet from Andy No. The man in custody over the mass casualty incident in Waukesha has posted on his social media in support of Black Lives Matter causes, George Floyd, and black nationalism. He also has a post about how to get away with running people over on the street. And this is where it gets tough. They exploit our justice system. They use it against us. Now, let me explain. My understanding is that they found the vehicle. They found a license in the vehicle or something like that. The vehicle belongs to a man. They've taken him into custody. They don't know if he's the actual driver. And I got to be honest, based on some of the blurry stills I've seen, it might not be. Someone else may have been driving that car. Now, everyone's saying this guy who supports Black Lives Matter did it. We don't know it was him. Could have been anybody driving that car. It's tough. But this person also posted about how to get away with running people over. So at the very least, it sounds like there's reason to believe. Look, if you post about Black Lives Matter, black nationalism, how to run away with, how to hit people and get away with it, and then someone uses your car to do it, it sounds kind of like you had some involvement. But innocent until proven guilty. Kyle Rittenhouse was not guilty. And that means he is innocent. Because you're always innocent. The judge even says so. But these leftists want revenge. And that's what scares me. They want revenge. And then all of a sudden, we end up with this story. The suspect in a mass death incident is a Black Lives Matter supporter. Black nationalist, apparently. And he had a post about how to get away with running people over. And he ran through a parade in a mostly white suburb. I believe mostly. I don't care about the race of the people involved. I don't. But this is the issue. The left has created this racial crisis in this country. And they'll say they didn't. They'll say they didn't. They did. Because I've long fought for civil rights. I've long believed in civil rights. I come from a family who can tell me all the horror stories about what it's like not to have civil rights. From my grandparents to my parents, we can see, as a second generation multiracial family, I can tell you exactly how amazing America is and how we've won. And things have gotten better. But these leftists just keep saying it's worse and it's getting worse, and it's not true. And it's mostly white progressives, white liberals who keep saying it, and it's not true. And they're actively making it worse. They're pissing people off. They're scaring people. They're inciting violence. I don't want to do that. I don't want people to go out there and be mad at anyone over their race. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's evidence to anybody who pays attention that race has almost no bearing in any of this. I say almost because there's racism, for sure, from the left and from the right. But when I say almost, what I would like to point out is that overwhelmingly, the issue that plays into race is coming from the left. It's not Republicans who are going out there and demanding racial quotas or anything like that. They're opposed to it. Republicans, for the most part, seem to be adopting traditionally liberal views. And this is actually kind of worrying if you think about it. To see Jack Posobiec, conservative, saying the state lies to protect its interests. To see the conservatives questioning big pharma and these corporations, but to see that the Democrats, the liberals, were doing that 10 years ago. Is this really just Republicans or Democrats going the speed limit? Or is this a wake-up call that moderates and people on the right are going to start standing up for liberty and freedom and calling out the machine, be it corporate or government? Certainly hope the latter. But that means we have to hold the line. It may just be that there's a wave of, authoritarianism. When people gain power, they want to abuse it. They tell you to shut up. Right now, we have a problem. And that problem is that on the left, there's already calls for retribution. Following calls for retribution, a man with ties to Black Lives Matter becomes a suspect in running down a Christmas parade in Milwaukee. It's very close to Kenosha. It's I think an hour or so drive, or hour and a half maybe. They're basically suburbs of Milwaukee. It seems too much to be a coincidence. It was interesting, though. The media said person of interest. And this leftist said, I showed you, we need to know the race of the person so we know if it was self-defense or terror. I don't know if that's actually a criticism of a pro-leftist statement. I think there's something that can be said in a way that if the person was, Muslim, the media would say, they'd say person of interest. They wouldn't tell you the race or the religion. And if the person was white, they would absolutely say white male suspect in custody. Because the establishment and the media, they're racist and they want to fan the flames. And what ends up happening then is you get the inverse. I don't know what to tell you, man. I feel for all these families. Like I said, I remember waking up, going out on Christmas, and we had our Christmas parades and we'd see everybody march, and this is just a nightmare scenario. I don't know if it was terror. I personally believe it was intentional. Because you watch this person turn through the barrier. They could have left that parade road at any time. They didn't. They just ran through people. The police won't rule out terrorism. I did not want to be doing a segment on this first thing in the morning. It's not what I wanted to do. We got a bunch of other stories. We got crazy stories about government terror and authoritarianism, and I don't know, man. It becomes brutal having to deal with all this stuff. The Kenosha story is not something to celebrate. Kyle Rittenhouse being free, it is. Yeah, we want justice to be served, and everybody was wrong. All these leftists were wrong. The media was wrong. What happened in Kenosha was a tragedy. To have to wake up and be like, these people lost their lives. I don't care if you think they were criminals or not. We don't want people going around dying, and we don't want conflict in the streets. We want these people with these problems like Rosenbaum. That guy should be locked up forever. Anthony Huber, convicted, he's got his crimes. Gage Grosskreutz has got his crimes. But we don't want conflict. Some people do, and that's scary because we will not survive. There's something called Fermi's paradox. Many of you may be familiar with it. It's a question about how, if the universe is so vast and large, why is it that we have not yet interacted with intelligent life, or why not have found them? One of the proposed reasons in Fermi's paradox that we have not interacted with intelligent life is called the Great Filter. The Great Filter is a reference to some kind of event that occurs with all intelligent life that eventually results in that intelligent species being destroyed. And the Great Filter can be caused by internal conflict. Some hypothesize that when an intelligent species grows to a certain point through the natural selection, breeding competition, you end up with war and conflict, and then eventually they just wipe themselves out and bring them back to the Stone Age. We don't want that. We do not want a future where people are fighting in the streets over ideology. But I'll tell you this, people also will defend themselves. When we get more information on this, I'll report it. But for the time being, I think it's very, very important that in this segment, the one thing you take away is this is a person of interest. I don't even think it's a suspect, to be completely honest. We don't know for sure as of right now if the person who supported Black Lives Matter even drove that car. We just don't know. So all of these people on the left and the right who are jumping the gun, we got to wait. For the time being, we give our condolences to those who were affected, and we hope there is swift justice. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.